Alright, this is the video called Jellal versus Erza. Alright, this is a fairy tale video. Inverse battle. Alright? I have three, scenarios, right? The first scenario is the Tower of Heaven, right? That shit basically played out, you know. Scenario two is, the Grand Magic Games. And then scenario three is the Alvarez Empire arc, you know, during that point in time. So it's, scenario one, strength goes to Jalal. Jalal is like, I have the Tower of Heaven. You know, it's my life's work. For Zareth. At this point in time, he's still under control of Old Tyr, which she's under control of Hades, which he's under the influence of the idea of Zareth and how to bring him back and other things to create a new magic world. And Jalal is trying to help them do that, because he's under, control from, Old Tyr, you know. And speed goes to Jalal. He has heavenly body magic, so he's really fast. When he puts on that meteor, he's, pretty fucking quick. Natu couldn't catch him. Even, he had to go into, he had to use Dragon Force to be fast enough to touch him. Durability goes to Erza, though. See, Jalal doesn't have that much durability. If you can hit him hard enough, that damage is, shown and other things, and he's like, damn, I'm fighting with a broken rib, or, I'm fighting with, this or that. He's not the most durable guy, you know. Endurance, though, still goes to Jalal. Jalal can still, fight through the pain and, do that, especially against Urza, you know. And intelligence goes to Jalal as well. She thought that, Jalal was somebody, like, she thought that Seagrain Jalal and Jalal were the same, or were different people, like they were brothers, but they are actually the same person. Jalal used projection magic, and he was like, no, Seagrain was made from my mind and other things. It's just me. Experience goes to Jalal, because he had knowledge of magical power before Urza did. He told her to leave the island because she wasn't heeding calls to bring the tower about and bringing back Zera. Close skills go to Urza, though. Urza is better at close skills, close range combat. You know, he specializes in the long range combat. And he does have close range skills, but Urza's just better. And he is better at the long range attacks. And making them work and hit. And they are powerful. His long range attack. Recoup goes to Jalal too. You know, Jalal has better recoup abilities. Hacks then go to Jalal as well. He's one of the 10 wizard saints. Urza has, power comparable almost, but at that point she wasn't quite there. You know, Hacks go to Jalal though, and then Environment goes to Jalal as well because he knows about the Tower of Heaven. So in the first scenario, it's 9-2 in Jalal's favor. People might think other things, but that's what it is. He's winning that fight easily. You know, and he like did care about Urza, and he does love Urza and shit, but like that's not even a factor and shit because in this scenario he's still controlled by Old Tyr, and the idea of bringing Zeref back, you know, that was his goal. If Natu never showed up, Urza would have been done. Now on scenario two, that's at the Grand Magic Games. Now this is different. Um, this is where shit changes, y'all. Shit changes now. Girl does other stuff. After time skip and other shit. Strength goes to Urza. In this one, She knows how to, stand on business for the kingdom, and not just the kingdom, but the guild and everything else. She gets, amped for, I have to do this for my, guild and other things. Jalal has a goal, right? He does have that, and he has the goal of, eliminating Zeref and shit. But if he's fighting against Urza, that's going against what he does. What his objective is. And Urza is like, and she's more on the right there and everything. She's fighting for more than he is. And she's actually essentially fighting for the same thing. You know, Speed though still goes to Jalal. Jalal goes, stupid on some speed, and then durability goes to Urza. Urza has new armor. She's more durable now. She always was more durable than Jalal was. You know, she has like people like Loxus, and Natsu to compete with in Fairy Tale on like a consistent, you know, basis. Whereas Jalal, he may come across some other wizards and other things, but not all the time. Endurance goes to hers as well. She fought in the Grand Magic Games against, Minerva and Kagura Mikazushi, which is Simon's sister. And she fought against both of them, holding down for Fairy Tale. And then after that, she went to go fight in the town against, the fake ass dragons that were appearing, the little dragon thingy. Jalal was there too, but his endurance would not last that long. He fought against somebody powerful too in the Grand Magic Games, but Urza could still hold down against that guy too, believe it or not. You know, she fought more foes in that arc, and she also, she was still there standing, and he fought less, and he was like more tired than she was. You know, intelligence goes to Jalal. Experience also goes to Jalal. Close skills are Urza. Urza still has the close skills. She's good with a sword and other things, and if she has to, she'll punch. She'll hit the shit out of somebody. Punch, kick. She'll even bite somebody too. You know, to win a fight. Range skills are Jalal. He still has, the meteor shower with the Grand Chariot. He has, Selma, which is that big ass meteor he can send down. And he didn't send that shit down. But if he did, Urza, yeah, and she does have answers. And, hacks go to Urza. Um, she has, different armors. She had unlocked Akagame armor, and she had that to defeat Minerva. Minerva wasn't a saw. She was, one of the most powerful wizards in the guild. Endurance, or not endurance, but the environment goes to Urza. She'll protect the kingdom too. She has Fairy Tale, and that's her family. And it's a part of the kingdom. And Fairy Tale wizards fight hard for their guild, harder than any other guild, and that's why they're still standing. But 5-6 though, it's a closer fight than before. But Urza ends up winning that fight because she got through Spirit Origin training because of Ultia and other shit. But then she fought in the Grand Magic Games and shit too, and she had more experience fighting, and she would be able to fight against somebody of his power by that point. And then this last scenario too, during the Alvarez Empire arc, when they were fighting in Magnolia and Hargion, the strength goes to Urza. You know, she's holding down business. She, fought against. And I ain't trying to like hate on Jalal because I like Jalal too. But she was, she was putting in work against her own mother, who was a dragon slayer, the first dragon slayer. Not just that, but an enchanter. See, her mom, um, she switched shit around the world of Fairy Tale. Shit was, misconstrued certain ways. Shit was, put different places. Hardion was in, Fiore capital, where the king is, and all kind of shit got switched around. When she fought somebody like that who was fucking with the landscape, and Jalal was kind of having problems against, August, but August is kind of on the same level. He was having problems with other people too. Um, he needed help. She had help too, but not like that. Um, Speed goes to Jalal still. Jalal is still faster than Erza. Durability goes to Erza, and then endurance also goes to Erza. Intelligence goes to Jalal, and also experience too. Um, Close skills go to Erza, and range skills go to Jalal. Recoup goes to Erza, because she was running around everywhere. She ran to stop Natsu and Grace fight, and then she went to fight her mom, and then she went to find Jalal and the other people to find a way to destroy Acnologia. She was running around doing all that shit, and she was still on her feet, ready to do shit. Her health bars were ready to go. Hacks go to Urza. She has now she has a way to imbue dragon slaying magic into a sword. She can hunt dragon slayers now, and have easier time at fighting them than fucking, Jalal does. You know, and that come into play later in the 100-year quest. Um, but she still had that during Fairy Tale, and that's how she was able to defeat her mother, and cause her to, have a change of heart. Um, but environment goes to Urza too, like I said, she's a part of Fairy Tale, right? And she'll fight hard for Fairy Tale. And that's what that arc was all about. And Jalal was just there to help out, but if he somehow turned evil and was fighting against her, she would win. There's no doubt in my mind she would win that, and it's 4-7 at this time. So as it comes to, Jalal and Urza, they're actually, in love with each other. But if it comes down to fighting one another, and Urza wouldn't want to fight against Jalal either, but she would defeat Jalal if if they were against each other, and they were taking the fight seriously. Both of them were. She would win. You know, more times than Jalal. Only at the beginning of the series was she weaker. But stay cool, Claw in the corner.